Well, Lewis Hamilton is starting the Spanish Grand Prix from the pole, his 100th career pole. Congratulations to him, well deserved. And it was another classic Lewis Hamilton day in Barcelona. So many factors with which to play that he had to get right. And guess what? He did. The track is incredibly changeable in Barcelona. It's never the same. 5 minutes on, the track conditions change, the grip level changes, crosswinds change. But Lewis managed all that extremely well. Secondly, he felt understeer in the car that he hadn't had in the morning. He'd made a couple of changes, or the team made a couple of changes to the car. So very quickly he had to adapt his driving to that. And that would have been all about Lewis's ability, particularly coming out of the brake pedal pressure, the rate at which he's loading up the steering, all easy for me to say, all micro millisecond stuff when you're in the cockpit of the car. But Lewis adapting beautifully to that, and why wouldn't he be? He's been doing it for so long. And then thirdly, the main issue in Barcelona in qualifying is getting the outlap at exactly the right rate in terms of front to rear tire temperatures, and then beyond that, massive amount of traffic. Even going into Q3, a lot of traffic with everybody basically going out at the same time. But magically, Lewis finding free air, getting a perfect lap in at the beginning, in the first part of Q3, which turned out to be the quicker part. He wouldn't have known that, of course, and got in a great pole lap. That put Lewis 0.03 of a second quicker than Max Verstappen's Red Bull Honda, but the gap in reality is much bigger than that now because Max is on the dirty side of the grid and you've got Lewis Hamilton on the pole, Valtteri Bottas P3, and it's going to be very difficult, I think, for Max even to be third going into turn one. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Obviously, it all depends on everybody making equal starts. But from where he is on the grid, you would imagine if you're Max, you're thinking, make a good start, maybe get some sort of tow from Lewis, maybe get down the inside, maybe. But in reality, Merck's on the clean side of the grid. If you were Toto Wolff and you didn't have Valtteri Bottas on the pole, you would say, I really want him P3 on the clean side behind Lewis. And that's exactly where it is. So as per the heading for the video yesterday, looking good for Mercedes. So where was Max today? He was really good this morning. A different driver, I think, to the Max we saw yesterday. He was a bit scrappy. Today he looked really together. He looked like a guy set on getting pole position, what we were talking about. And he finished FP3, the morning session, fastest. He wasn't quickest in Q1. That honour went to Lando Norris, McLaren, Mercedes. We'll get onto that in a minute. But he was there or thereabouts. And he was quickest in Q2. And you were thinking it's going to be really close between him and Lewis. Depends kind of who gets the best outlap. Let's see what happens. As it happened, they both basically did the same lap time. As I say, just a few hundredths of a second going to Lewis Hamilton. So you'd have to say from Max's point of view, he probably got the best from the car. I think there probably was a little bit more in that Red Bull. And I think if Lewis got the pole today, probably it was the way he managed the traffic and managed the tire temperatures around the gaps that he was trying to get on the circuit. Going back to that comment that Max made in Portugal about how much backing up Lewis does. Well, of course, a lot of that also could well be Lewis knowing how quick he is and how quickly he's going to catch the cars in front. As I say, this is now a critical part of the Formula One driver's repertoire. And if there was any difference today, it was probably in the way Max and Lewis managed their outlaps. Really close between Ferrari and McLaren, and Daniel Ricciardo definitely had his best day yet since the start of the season. Get onto that also in a minute. But so far as Ferrari go, Charles looked a bit scrappy in Q2. It wasn't the Charles we normally see on that beautiful transition out of turn 2 into 3. Everything was long corner, slight jerks in the car. And he was therefore only 7th quickest in Q2. And that continued into the first part of Q3. Charles not really there. Carlos Sainz putting in another lap. As I said yesterday, there was no way Carlos was ever going to be slow around here. And Carlos in the first part of Q3 was a 10th quicker than Charles, P6, and Charles was P8. But in the last run in Q3, even though the track was now slower, Charles put in a lap that I think was at least as good in terms of quality as that of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. He did a 17.6 in the first part of Q3, but he did a 17.5 as the checkered flag came out, and that made him P4, best of the rest. Bear in mind, the two Mercedes and Max Verstappen, the track seemed to be 2 to 3 tenths slower in that last phase. That lap of Charles Leclerc translates into a low 17. Very good lap in that Ferrari. And now on to Lando Norris, who put in a really good lap at the end of Q1, 17.8. He was quickest at the end of Q1, and then he went 17.6 in Q2, looking like another brilliant Lando Norris day. But in Q3, he fell away, 18.0. The car for him had completely changed. But it was Daniel Ricciardo who, as we said yesterday, we should never be too tough on what's going on with Daniel because he is a touch and feel driver, and inevitably he is going to find some sort of sweet spot with that car. Well, that started today. He was very good in FP3, put in a lap right at the end. He was very good in Q1. And in Q3, he was the McLaren driver that went out and did the 17.6 that Lando had done in Q2. So even though Lando had a bad Q3, for McLaren, it wasn't bad because finally Daniel Ricciardo up to pace with a 17.6. Very good lap. Very good lap too by Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, 17.5, P5 in that car. Fernando Alonso also made it through to Q3. He ended up P10, he'll be disappointed with that. He was complaining all day about oversteer in the car, how that was limiting what he wanted to do with it. But Esteban Ocon getting absolutely right on it. So another very good performance. We've been saying that Alpine have been lifting their pace since the Portuguese Grand Prix, and that translated again into very strong grid positions for the Grand Prix tomorrow. Sergio Perez was disappointing in the other Red Bull Honda. He carelessly caught an edge with the left front, not what you would expect from a driver of his experience, and as a result of losing confidence, will start only 8th tomorrow. Neither Aston Martin or AlphaTauri made it through to Q3. Yuki Tsunoda didn't even make it out of Q1, but George Russell again did a sterling job for Williams to get into Q2. So it's the two Mercs sandwiching Max Verstappen. That'll be an interesting drag down to the first corner. It's Charles Leclerc ahead of the rest, but Esteban Ocon looking really good in the Alpine. And then there's Carlos Sainz in there as well. He should never be discounted on home ground, and nor, of course, should Fernando Alonso, who's now got into that rhythm of, we hope, racing better than he qualifies. I'd just like to finish this video by wishing my dear friend Carlos Reutemann, great racing driver too, all the best. He's critically ill in hospital in Argentina, so thoughts and prayers with you, Carlos. And you know you've got a lot of motor racing fans out there pulling for you as well. See you tomorrow.